Okay, just gonna start running through these in just a sec. So yeah, if you've got any questions, ask them along the way. So any questions, just ask them along the way. But I'm gonna be running through the next lot of modules in the list. So we did A and B last week, and this week we will do from C. Yeah, g'day. One second, I just have to check if I've got enough levels. On my guitar. And 4. Cool. All right. And action. Oh yeah, question to start off. Where is the best place to report bugs? There is a bug tracker on our GitHub. So if you check there, that's usually the easiest place for me to keep track of them. But if you just email them through to us, that usually works as well. So yeah, hopefully you can hear me over on the YouTube stream or on Instagram. So we have a basic patch here, but we'll start off going through the collection. So last week we showed envelopes, attenuverters, basic reverb, bit crushing, and the more complicated one, bit mangling. To start off today, we are going to start off on quite complicated. The chaos controller. But to really show, and we'll go through all the ones that are C. Hopefully we'll get through all of C, and we might even get onto some of D. Yeah, chaos controller is a complicated one to start with, but it is very fun and very versatile. So I'll add a chaos controller here. You can use the chaos controller for a lot of stuff. I'm going to show it in the context of generative kind of stuff, making sound that generates itself. So, got a chaos controller I've added there. I'm also going to add a macro oscillator just so I have something that can generate sound. I'm going to add a VCA after the macro oscillator so I can control the levels of the macro oscillator easily and do some other fun stuff. We'll turn that right down so we don't explode our faces. We'll worry about things there in a sec. So, we've got this little synthesizer here, but it won't be making any noises yet. So, what does the chaos controller do? As the name says on the box, it generates controlled chaos. So, it'll give you, you can see that it's got a bunch of different inputs and outputs. So, it'll give you triggers, so ons and offs, which you can say, hey, play a thing here or do a thing here, and also give you a collection of values. So when we go into here, we'll see which we've got our X and Y's, so that's values. And then we've also got ones that say T, and so there's triggers. So we can say T clock BPM. These can all be clocked in different ways. You can do a bunch of fancy things with them, and they've got multiple outputs. So, yeah, chaos controller is very powerful. There are different ways to generate chaos. It takes different inputs, different clocks and stuff like that, and it can do this thing called deja vu, where it will have repeated sections of chaos. So we'll just show a simple patch with this. So I'll just connect this up to the macro oscillator. So again, we want a trigger first. So we'll trigger, and we'll connect the trigger up to, trigger in this case. So that'll be triggering the macro oscillator. Currently we won't be able to hear that doing anything. It's because we haven't connected up our output yet. We'll just check level there, and we'll connect that output. I'm running it out of 1 and 3. So we'll see that we're getting triggers out now. it goes bing. So when does it go bing? And, well, so this will be the sound of it. It's going bing at a quarter oftenness of 120. So if we want one beat every time, we'll just go up to here. You'll notice that these beats aren't all the time because, again, this is a chaos controller. So you'll have a certain amount of beats. You can control the jitter of this, how often these happen. And so the gate, so we're controlling whether it's happening. These settings here, the gate generator, controls how it's triggered. So, you know, if we can control how likely the different outputs are, because remember we've got different outputs, so we can bias between the two different outputs. Okay, so we could show that by having two different macro oscillators. Because say we want to have one of these two outputs happen more often, because remember, I'll grab another one of these, another friendly macro oscillator. Remember, I can just hold those to duplicate them. We'll grab a different sound. We'll route that to the same VCA. So we've got continuous sound now because we're not triggering that guy. T2. Trigger. Now we're triggering. You'll see that it's alternating, well, kind of, between which ones? Because we're doing this coin toss thing. We can bias between them. So we're biased all the way to 1. Some of these start to get more interesting because you can't start to get ones where you get multiples and things like that. Like this. So this is more like a likelihood of it happening, and the triggers happen every time. This one, you get these ratcheting effects. So again, the chaos controller is a very powerful module for doing generative stuff or random stuff. So remember, you can connect this, I'm connecting this up to synth things right now, but you could connect it up to quite a large variety of different stuff. Yeah, whether it's things like controlling a very complicated tremolo, phases, flanges, any kind of normal traditional effect, or synthesis stuff like that. So you notice that all of our pitches are the same at the moment. Well, the chaos controller can control more stuff. So this is just the gate generator at the moment. That's getting a bit hectic. So this is just the gate generator at the moment. Well, we've got more things. So we've got our two different types of value, CV output. One of which is this X voltage. And then we've got our Y one here. The little picture tells you kind of what's going to happen. See, obviously rate gets more squiggly, so it gets more, faster this way. Spread is just, how much is spread out. So just look at the pictures to kind of hopefully work out what's going to go there. Steps, obviously, how smooth it is. So let's try these ones. So we'll try connecting this up to pitch first because that's nice and obvious. So let's go X1 output, 2 volt per octave. So that's the pitch input for this guy. And we'll go X2 output, 2 volt per octave for the other one. So it's currently not very interesting. And you will ask, why? Why is it so? So we don't have any spread at the moment. So we've now got some more spread. So So you can control how much these spread. You can bias this spread in case you want them all to be to the lower end or the higher end. So you can control how smooth these changes are, whether they're... so at the moment we're doing on triggers, so they happen when the trigger happens, but you can have them so they slowly sweep between things. So now we're getting our, weird fretless action, basically. And more quantized in that direction. Speaking of quantized, if you start getting into the fixed pitch options, kind of fretted options, instead of that kind of continuous style, once you've got the smoothness set over there, then these scale selections will start to become a thing, and it will change which notes are available. From a range of different scales, including these rags. So there's some traditional scales and some some Western scales and some non-Western scales. So yes, the next thing to explain. Kind of fun. Next thing to explain is déjà vu. So, at the moment we have kind of pretty chaos, but it is, chaos. I also want to run the Yeah, that's better. Everybody needs a little bit of reverb. Sorry, that was a sidetrack. Everything needs a little bit of reverb. Is my strong feeling. So, back to the task at hand. The déjà vu. So, déjà vu is how often things are repeated. So, you can lock things in, so instead they become loops of repeated content. So if I set a particular loop length, déjà vu probability will tell you how likely it is to introduce new content versus looping the existing content. So if we lock T, the triggers will stay the same, timing, and only the notes will change. If we lock both of them, then for that loop length, both will start to stay the same. So the probability will then change how likely it is for new content to be introduced. So you can change how chaotic the chaos controller is. Yeah, and so déjà vu length there will change how short the repeated section is. So you see now that we've locked into quite a short and very repetitious section. But if we go up here, we get different likelihood of introduction of content. here, at this point, it's very unlikely for it to introduce new content. If we move away from the middle, we start to get new content in different ways, whether they're more triggers or more CV changes. The chaos controller is very powerful. So the Y output is, you get another different CV output, and there's little little explanations of what all those do. If you want much more information, so the chaos controller is based on a module from Mutable Instruments, which is a Eurorack brand that sadly no longer is making modules, but did make some amazing modules. And this is a port of their module called Marbles. If you press this one, you'll see some more details about it, and you'll see these QR codes, which you can click on, or scan, I guess. Scan is the word I was looking for there. You can scan these QR codes, and you'll get manuals for Mutable Instruments marbles. So all the same features are applicable here. Obviously, our user interface is different, but same kind of things are applicable here. So you can start to also use some of these outputs to control some of the other parameters. So obviously, we can use Y and connect that up to something here. Like morph, and then we'll make morph actually do something. So that starts to change now. Getting a bit hectic, but you can see we're now doing things with the Y, specifically too many things with the Y. Which may or may not be letting you in live. So, that's the chaos controller. Obviously, it's doing generative things here, but it can do a lot of other stuff. You notice it's also got a range of inputs of its own. So you can control a lot of these parameters from CV, from MIDI, and you can clock it in different ways to get more complicated things. Or use it to do things like probabilistic gates. So that's that one. Oh, that's not one. You go there. So calm that down for a little bit. So now you're just hearing the reverb of it. So that is the complicated module for today, I hope. Now we get on to things like chorus. I'll just glance if there are any questions. So that was the Chaos controller, which is obviously big, scary, and complicated. But we're going to be going through more of the modules. We'll try and get through all of the collection. Oh yes, somebody asked a question about self-patching, which is being able to patch a module into itself. You can't do that. In the original Mutable Instruments the Eurorack module, you can, so there will be some suggestions where they suggest self-patching. In this case, you can't. You can, however, just run two different modules, which is, relatively straightforward to do in this context. One of the other questions was about the CPU meter up here. You can see that it's currently saying I'm using 60% or something like that. Running a couple of big heavy modules. The CPU meter is somewhat creative. Because the system has 4 different CPU cores, that's when you add a new module, sometimes if you add it as a parallel path, it might actually use no more CPU because there might be a core free. This is an indicator of the most busy core. So you might currently have 3 cores that are doing nothing and 1 that's fully utilized because everything is in series. If you do stuff in parallel, then you end up being able to do more stuff because it splits better over the 4 cores. So, 4 things in parallel is going to be the most CPU friendly. Some modules are very heavy, some are very light. So yes, that's a little bit of the chaos controller. Now we will go for a calmer patch. We'll just turn this guy down, and we'll kill off these BCAs into a little bit of reverb. So now we'll add the next one. So we are up to chorus. Yes, okay, these are all pretty straightforward. So there's a couple of different chorus options here. You'll have the dimension chorus, the D chorus, the multi-dimensional chorus. There are 2 versions of each of these on, so you'll notice there's one for external control and one without external control. So let's look at our options here. So this one has, depth and BPM. If you look at the other version, the chorus D external, you notice that it doesn't have BPM. So this one, and it has got a CV input. So this one you can put your own LFO or the chaos controller or something into in case you want more complicated chorus options. So you can decide what type of LFO you want by putting in the looping oscillator, the looping envelope, any of the oscillators, or the chaos controller or the LFO or any of those things. So anything, if you want to run the macro oscillator as an LFO into this, that's a thing you can do if you want. You've also got all of these other, options for more complicated LFO options to make this chorus interesting. But otherwise, they're the same chorus. And that's the same for a lot of the things where they say external. It's just you have a plug to put in a CV control, whereas the ones that don't say external, they have a BPM inside. So they'll. So if you want to do more complicated things, use the external ones. If you want to do tempo syncing, you can just connect up an LFO that's got a synced tempo and then have it in there. And then you can do ratios of tempos to different things as well, which will be a thing we will show as we get up to ratios. So we'll just turn on the chorus. I will go out to 1 and 3 because they're the ones I've got plugged in. And we have chorus. So you'll notice that's quite slow at the moment because our BPM is down at 30. Straightforward. Depth is as you would expect. So yeah, deviation is because there's 8 different 8 different delay lines that make up the chorus. So they'll be modulated by different amounts, which you'll see on the different the deviation, and the delay of each of the lines will control how intense that kind of chorus effect is. But basically, it's a chorus. So they're that characteristic of the chorus. Now we go on to the J chorus. So the J chorus, J is for Japanese or journo. Of course, it is not a direct copy of the journo. It is inspired by things along those lines. It's got two sets of choruses that you can turn on and off, and it's also got breaks for those two. It's a simpler one. You can have some plugs into that one as well, which we will show. So we'll just drop this chorus out and this one in. I'll just run into both of those ones and out of those. So again, hold a thing and touch a thing to connect. So you'll hear this one. Nothing really, it's a cool sounding chorus, I like it, but nothing complicated to explain, luckily. That's the that's the J chorus, and that's power choruses. I'll just check for questions. Somebody says about the CPU usage on complicated patches. Sometimes when you sometimes if you are pushing a patch very close to the CPU usage limit, it will sometimes when you load up fall onto different cores depending on what's happening, and sometimes that means that the performance will be different. I'd recommend keeping away from being all the way up to the maximum, especially if you're using a lot of serial paths. Usually if you're using parallel paths, you end up being further from the performance limit. Choruses. I think that's everything you need to know about choruses. One thing I have explained a few times, but I'll just show, it's not specific to choruses, but if you want to turn things on and off, you can you just hold them and then press the foot switch. Now, you can do this so you can toggle between stuff as well. So you can hold them in opposite states and then have them toggle in case you want to switch between these two different types of choruses, which I can show. If we have this guy over here, one connects to the other one. Let's get this guy out. Let's have a bit much there. So we have multiple different types of choruses. What else did I want to say about choruses? Probably nothing. What else is there on the list of chorusy things? Next, chorus J. Oh yes, okay. I knew there was a bit that was coming up that was relevant. Somewhat relevant to the other bits. So, clock dividers. How does one do things with clock dividers? And what does one want to do? There are two different types of clock or tempo and things in Beebo. There is a tempo that is things like BPM, beats per minute, and there is a clock, which is the Eurorack style clock, which you'll see if you're using Eurorack gear, which is a series of pulses. If you are using Eurorack style clock, you can use this clock divider so that, as it says, outputs a trigger every n triggers. So if you want one of your things to go off on every fifth beat, you can have it so that this divides that down. So when your number is set to 5, it sends out a trigger for every one of those clocks that comes in. Whether that's either actually a clock or it's a trigger from foot switches or something like that, it means you can create complicated patterns like that, which I can run through with something like the chaos controller is a complicated one to show that with because it's already chaotic. If we run that into an LFO, then we can probably I can show you how to get the LFO being triggers that then use a clock divider. That's probably the relevant one for that. If anybody needs to see clock dividers, oh yeah, on that. Okay, on this CV to MIDI CC. Okay, yes. We have a question about which I'll get to this one as well, the CV to MIDI CC. I'll run through that one. I'm about to get to that module. So there's a question about resolution, which is not, that's a fix for some other pedals that it needs to work with, and I'll show you more. I can explain why. So I think I broke mine earlier. One sec. I will explain the CV stuff after I've worked out what's going on here. This is my development one, and occasionally I break things. Yeah, so I can explain what's going on with the other one. Yes, so yes, CV to MIDI CC. The resolution isn't a value or anything like that. Resolution is how many values to send when there is a change. So say you've got a value that's 0.5 and your next value is 0.500003 or something. That example doesn't make sense. Because MIDI's an 8-bit thing, 7-bit thing. So yeah, MIDI is 0 to 127. So you can either send, if you've got a change of 1, say you're on 128, 0 to 127. Say you're on 64 and you have a change to 65, you can send that change. So if you've got all of the resolution, you send every single change. If you've got less resolution, then you can send a change when it changes from 64 to 66. Maybe that's a big enough change to send, or maybe you want it to change when it's 64 to 80. Why did I add this resolution parameter, you may ask? It's because some pedals I found when you were sending a high-speed LFO to them, they wouldn't cope with the full set of changes, and they would break. I haven't tested whether Eventide has fixed this yet, but it used to break the H9. But it was a long time ago that was an issue, so they probably have fixed that in an update. They're very capable people, so I'm sure that they will work that out. But yeah, that's why I added it in, because I was running with an H9, and if you sent too much data, it would get confused. MIDI is sometimes complicated to get perfect, so that's not entirely unexpected that there's going to be edge cases like coping with lots of changes quickly or something like that. Clock dividers. So let us. I'll show you an LFO into a step sequencer because that's very visual and easy to see. So we've got our clock divider. It's very straightforward. And I'll send an LFO into a step sequencer because then you can see what's going on. I'll send an LFO into our clock divider. We're not actually doing anything with the audio here. We can get rid of this other stuff. And we'll send this one into the step sequencer external. So this one, we'll draw some squiggles in here. So at the moment it's not changing. If we send this one, we can have triggers into there. So step trigger, that will be fine. So now we're getting triggers every step. Now if we turn up our clock divider to 5, we'll have to wait a while, and then we'll get a trigger. So now we're triggering every 5 pulses. So you could easily have things at different tempo ratios of clock ratios. So that's the clock divider. It divides triggers. So yeah, if you want to have something happen at different times, use that one. So that might be handy with stuff like the chaos controller, an LFO like that, or many other ones. Clock dividers, CV meters. Yeah, this one's pretty straightforward. We can see what the value is of this CV here because we're sending it out. But anyway, we now can tell what it is. This meter shows us what the value is. We've also got some stats down here, like what the maximum CV we've ever seen is, what our current one is, and this reset, that'll reset these stats for us. This is just handy for debugging when you're trying to work out, am I putting in positive or negative CVs? Am I doing something weird that I don't expect? Sometimes the CV meter will be handy for that. So that's just an example with the CV meter. And now we get on to the other one, CV to MIDI CC, which we were just talking about. So we have our, let's get rid of the CV meter. We'll just get rid of this CV meter. Can take that one out. So we've connected our step sequencer external output, and we've connected it up CV to MIDI CC. We will now connect our CV output to this one. If I had planned this more earlier, I would then route this MIDI out into the Josh Smith Flat 5 that I have next to me, and then we could do fun things on it. That's probably something I shall do in the future, because it will be cool to look at. So, as I mentioned, resolution will be how big a change needs to happen for us to send a change. Usually, most things will be fine with it having the full resolution, and it'll just send as fast as the other one is changing. So if this one rapidly changes, it'll send it as fast as it can. If this one changes slowly, it'll still just send it that. Whereas if you cut down the resolution, you will just send less messages. Channel is what channel you send on. CC number is what CC number you want to send on. Some things count from 0, some things count from 1, depending on vibe. So sometimes if you feel like if you want to send CC number 43, you might be counting from 0 and send 43, or you might be counting from 1 and send 44. That's something to watch out for. Different gear thinks of whether it should count from 0 or from 1 differently, depending, mostly whether it's, 80s gear or something like that. Actually, I think it's probably all of times do weird things with where to count for. So that's, you can connect everything up to this, any type of change you've got here, an LFO or a clock divider, something. You can have the LFO going through clock divider into this directly, or just an LFO into this directly, or the step sequencer into there. You could also set up, foot switches to send different messages to your other bits. And remember, we've got a lot of MIDI modules in case you want to do things on the bit that's afterwards. So you can change the CV, obviously, to smooth it, or do different... the CV to smooth it. You can also change the MIDI, the yellow line afterwards. Hopefully that's questions on those ones. Sorry. So there's no value in the CV to MIDI CC one because the value is the value that's coming in from the CV. So if you want to limit that value to be between particular areas, or if you want to do anything more complicated to that value, yeah, like smoothing it, anything like that, you can do all of those things to the CV part of it. Because there's modules for all of that. You can put a max module there if you want to limit its max value, or you can, offset it by a sum or something like that. Yeah, related question. You can, if you've got this routed to multiple things, you can turn them on and off with the same on and offy things. You can also route different, because you can pan the CVs or something. If you've got two different CVs going into it, you can have them going through a pan. If you've got them routed to different MIDI to the same CV going to different MIDI CV to MIDI CCs, you can pan. Or you can use something like the wet dry to route them to the different CV values to a single CV to MIDI CC, in case you want to change that as it goes. I think that was the question. Yeah, so you can blend those. What is next in our collection of CV to note works in a very similar way. We'll have one of those. CV to note. So, channel, note offset. Pretty straightforward. You'll send in so this will send out MIDI notes. So you connect up your MIDI out to send notes. Choose a channel. And so note offset is just going to be if you want to have, if you're sending in a note and you want it to be offset, say you want to put it up by an octave, or you want it to be up, a fifth or something, you can add notes to it. This is mostly useful if you're doing either splits or if you're doing, if you want to have like a bass part produced by a different synth that you want to send out to, or something like that. You can change your CVs to put them into the right areas with the note offset part. So yeah, that's pretty straightforward. So you're taking a Eurorack style volt per octave CV, and you'll get out a MIDI note. You would need a gate as well, obviously. So yep, that's that one. Which CV to note, CV to trigger is the last of our Cs. I would say this note, you'll notice it has no controls. You basically should never really need this. But there might be a case where you have really noisy CV that... Yeah, no, there could be uses for this. So this is what's called a Schmitt trigger. So basically, if you've got a somewhat chaotic CV signal going in, it will make it so values... there's an area of values where it doesn't change. So if it goes above that value, it'll be a trigger. Then if it goes down again, it will only... it will have to go all the way out of the bottom of that range to be in a state where it can be a trigger again. So yeah, that's what a Schmitt trigger does. You might, if you're using Hector and you're taking in noisy external CVs, and you want to make sure that they're nice and clean triggers, you might need this in some cases, but you probably never will. I added it because I used them somewhere else, so I thought I might as well. So that is the things that are in C. So I'll just have a look at questions. So, yeah, to map the on-off to map on and off. So on and off can't currently be mapped to a MIDI CC. It can be mapped to a foot switch. So just hold it and then press the foot switch to toggle it. Yeah, same as I showed earlier. Yeah, I don't know. Deciding whether I should try and get through some of D. D is pretty straightforward. Maybe we can whack through some of D if people are up to. I'll see if are there any questions from people on Instagram. I can't. I'm not sure if I've missed any questions from people on Instagram. Sorry. I'm going to move the other bit and see if I can scroll. Oh, okay. There was an interesting question from somebody on, sorry about the scrolling on the phone. Annoyingly, I can only stream from Instagram actually on my phone, so it's kind of medium nightmarish. So somebody asked, how do I downclock my delays or reverbs? So that's really not related to the clock divider. The clock divider is for changing how triggers occur. By downclock, you'll mean something like downsample, change the sampling clock of that. So change what. So imagine that it's normally at 48 kilohertz, and you want to run it at a lower sampling rate. So there isn't. So there is ways to do that. There isn't one built into the reverbs or the delays. However, there is a way built into the twist delay to do that. So the twist delay, it isn't trying to model actually changing clock, but you'll get kind of the same effects, because with the twist delay, it models the speed of the tape. So there's a certain amount of magnet stuff per millimeter of tape, and as you run the tape slower, your quality gets lower. So as you start to run the tape really slow, you start to get basically the kind of similar effects to downclocking. The time stretch will get you into some of the similar territories as well. At the moment, there isn't a simple downsampler, which there probably should be, because there's there's bit crushing, and it's kind of a related effect, really. You start to get annoying aliasing noise and stuff like that, which may be what you want. You can, of course, have filters after that to try and mangle that in different ways. But yeah, basically, you can either have a version that doesn't give you aliasing noise because it does cunning stuff, or you can purposely just decimate and then, then you'll get aliasing noise, and that may or may not be what you like. I can show the twist delay off. Yeah, I can show those ones, or we can run through some of the rest of D. I think most of D is pretty straightforward, so I can whack these through pretty quickly. This is getting hectic though, isn't it? I'll clean up this patch. So, not set list. What am I pressing? Empty space. So that preset was getting a bit hectic. So up to D. D, ADHSR. So delay, attack, hold, decay, sustain, release. What is this? It's a big, complicated envelope. What's the difference between this and the ADHSR? This one has got more ins and outs. it's got more stages, and you can control it from CV. So you can control all the stages of this one. So if you want to do complicated things with an envelope, use this one. If you want to do really complicated things with an envelope, you might want to use the looping envelope instead. So same kind of parameters as the one we mentioned earlier in the first video, the AHDSR. This one just has hold. Hold is, so when it, delay is, this would be easier to explain with a picture. Delay is you send a trigger, it takes a little bit of time for the attack stage to start. That's delay in this context. Attack, it will get to the peak of its envelope. Hold is the amount of time you'll be there, then at the peak, then it'll go into its the decay stage, and it'll decay to the sustain level, which is the S part of this S, and then releases after you release the key. So after the gate is over. DAHDSR. That's not the easiest acronym to say. Delay is our favorite thing. We've already showed it a bunch. The delay module. What are we going to do? Yep. Cool. So we've connected up that delay. The delay module is very CPU efficient, very powerful, and you should use it lots. Again, if you ever want to change any of these values in a more specific way, you can press on them. So this one's got time in milliseconds and a big slidey thing for time. You can also set it to beats, in which case you'll be able to set subdivisions here, and then it will take a tempo in. Oh yes, people ask regularly about what glide and warp do, and we will show. Okay. Let's crank these up. Cool. We've got some repeats. So tone will control how much high pass filtering. Wait a minute. No, sorry. How much low pass filtering is happening. So you'll see that just the lows are getting through. We're getting progressively less high frequency information over time as we turn that up. Now we're brighter again. Into the repeats. Okay, warp can be thought of as the read head position. So if there's a thing writing information and there's a thing reading information, you can move the other bit. So it's basically changing where in the collection of time it's reading from. Modulating this, gently modulating this one, is a good way to get warble, things like that. So if you wanted to create a little bit of warble on that, you can connect up an LFO to that, which I will show in a sec. Now glide is if you change time, see how it goes, and makes weird squiggly noises. Glide changes the time it takes to get to your new tempo or delay time. And there I meant to change time. See how that's very slowly changing? As we've increased the glide. See, and you'll notice. We're smoothing that out. I'll turn this one right down. So these interact. So that can be used to kind of smooth some of the modulation effects that you want to do. Because modulating in a delay is a very effective, a very powerful technique. Oh yes, you'll notice that I had to route the direct and the repeats separately. It would be great to add, sorry, somebody just said it would be great to add tags to user-defined things. Yes, that is true. I'm actually totally changing the searching system. It's getting better because I needed to make it nicer for the amps stuff. It's all changing and getting better. I got distracted. Oh yes, so you notice I connect the dry paths for the dry and paths for the send and the return from the delay. A very powerful effect is to have things on the return from a delay. So even though there is the bit crush delay, you can just crush the repeats if you want. It'll end up being a different character because they're not fed back into themselves. But if we want to grab, say, our friendly phaser, we can pull off these ones, run this into there, and then, yep, that looks fine. So our direct signal doesn't have any phaser on it. But our repeats, they're phased. And it would sound very different if we phase the send, because then the repeats won't be changing over time. Whereas, yeah, if we I should show that actually. So that's yeah. Listen to this. Phaser on the repeats. Now, if we disconnect everything here and disconnect this guy, and we swaps those around, phaser, delay, outs. See, it's very different now. The delay still has different characteristics on it because it is going through the phaser, but the repeats aren't changing because the repeats aren't getting phased. So putting things on the send and the return gives you very different effects and is quite an interesting technique. And it's very powerful. So delay. Can I knock through the rest of D? Difference, diodes, Doppler-Panner. I think I might have to leave the rest of D for next week's thing, because I'll just go through the rest of the questions. Last questions. Okay, yeah, if anybody's got any last minute questions, I will try and glance through them. Yep, user tags. Oh, wait. Yeah, yeah. Somebody else asks about tags and presets. Yeah, I will definitely. We're we're changing how the whole searching for modules and preset system works. To change it to be more search orientated rather than this one. Because I'm doing some stuff with AMP captures at the moment, and for that I need better searching. So yeah, we're improving all of the search mechanism here to make it use the more keyboard and searchy based stuff. Yeah. So yeah, we will be improving that very soon. Yeah. Yep, somebody else asked about the coarse and fine knobs. Yeah, they just attach the same thing. There isn't an equivalent on Hector. So yeah, we'll hopefully get through the rest of D next week. Then the next few letters are pretty quick and easy, so we should be knocking through a couple of those in the next one after that. So to get away to yeah, I definitely would like to be able to bypass the whole pedal by MIDI. Currently, the way you'd have to do sort of the same thing is to bind a wet dry. So yeah, if you MIDI bind a wet dry, then you can do that. That's the recommended way at the moment. So yep, thanks for all your questions. Yeah, there was just a little general update about other stuff. We spent a bunch of time at Deluxe Guitars in Melbourne. It's a wonderful guitar shop. Last week, capturing a bunch of amazing amps, and hopefully they will be in Beebo in the not too distant future. So yeah, we will be releasing an update in a little while, depending on how quickly we get the UI working and looking good for that, where there will be amp captures in Beebo, and you'll be able to capture them yourself. So yeah, that's happening. Yeah, so we captured a bunch of amps, so thanks to Deluxe for those. And we'll be capturing a bunch more. And they will be in the pedal soon. So yeah. Yeah, thanks everybody for watching out. Yeah, if you've ever got any questions you can that you want to see on the streams, you can always email them through to me or email them through anytime. Yep. If you've got any questions, obviously about this isn't just a Beebo show. Obviously, there's some questions for Hector or Flat 5. We'll definitely cover any of them. Hopefully, we've covered all the media things. I might do a video sometime soon showing more detail about the MIDI stuff on Beebo, because we get a lot of questions about that, and also show it controlling Flat 5 so you can see how you can interact between the pedals and other pedals easily. So yeah, thanks very much, and we will see you next week. Thanks.